So, hello everyone. May I ask you to take your seats because we're going to start. It will going to be a long day, so we don't want to be late at the opening ceremony. Cher Monsieur Wust, directeur général de la culture du canton de Vaud, chère Jeannette Frey, directrice de la BCU Lausanne, très chère Jeannette, dear colleagues, dear attendees, it is a pleasure and a privilege for me to welcome you to the 54th LIBER Conference, taking place in Lausanne, and I am very grateful to Canton de Vaud, as well as to BCU Lausanne for the invitation to host our annual Congress. I am also glad to see that you are so numerous here today and the following days. More than 500 people, a very high scientific program thanks to our CPC, a lot of working group meetings, and many other networking opportunities during the whole week. My advice to newcomers is to learn, discuss, network, and of course enjoy. This conference will surely be a milestone for LIBER, taking place in 2025, but first planned for the anniversary of LIBER in the summer 2021, the Envision conference had to be cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemics we were facing at that time. Our association was founded in 1971 by a few visionary librarians who felt that there was an urgent need to foster and improve cooperation among European national and university libraries in a context where higher education and research were developing in Europe and the world at a very rapid pace, with a huge impact on libraries. Very similar in a way to the challenging times we are facing nowadays as librarians in a world in global transition. LIBER started small, some 50 plus years ago. A tiny team of librarians started to work in 1969 under the coordination of Jean-Pierre Clavel, director of the BCU Lausanne until 1986, and first chairman of LIBER. BCU Lausanne is also a very special member of LIBER, the only one to have given 2 presidents to the association. Jean-Pierre Clavel and our host, Jeannette Frey, who I am thankful to for both her past commitments as LIBER president and for her tenacity in rescheduling in Lausanne the LIBER conference after the cancellation in 2021. Last but not least, Clavel's vision and program for LIBER was including modernization of library buildings and their services as a key necessity, with the first colloquium ever organized by LIBER taking place in Lausanne in July 1971 to discuss library building topics. And here we are today, a few months ahead, the reopening of the refurbished and expanded BCU Lausanne main building, l'Unitec, scheduled for the end of 2025 and ready to cope with the challenges for the decades to come. This is indeed a piece of history for LIBER. Coming to the end of my introductory address, I'd like to thank again our host for the invitation, as well as for the commitment of the whole team. Preparing and organizing such a conference is a huge task. On behalf of the whole LIBER board, let me wish you a nice stay in Lausanne and a wonderful conference in order to engage, collaborate, innovate together to address global challenges for higher education and research libraries. Thank you very much. And now I'm handing over to Michel Wust for a few words of introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Mesdames, Messieurs, dear delegates, je vous souhaite la bienvenue à Lausanne. It is a great pleasure to welcome you today in the name of the Directorate for Culture of the Canton de Vaud. So just so you know, our Directorate for Culture is the administrative entity responsible for the management of the BCUL, We also manage 3 museums, and we oversee the funding of artists and arts organizations all over our region. Mr. Roche has already explained the strong historical link between the BCU Lausanne and the LIBER organization. So I would like to underline another kind of connection, which is to be found in the core principle of both your association and our canton. These principles are expressed in the very name of LIBER and on the flag of the canton de Vaud. As you know, the name LIBER etymologically refers to both livre and libre, meaning books and free. So these simple words convey the wonderful ideas that books are agents of freedom. As for the canton de Vaud, its flag boasts a motto dating back to the independence of the canton in 1798. The motto says, liberté et patrie. Liberté for freedom and patrie for something like homeland. Basically, patrie refers to a territory, but also relates to an heritage, to a shared culture, to regional identity, to citizenship, and a sense of belonging. So both LIBER and our canton have the idea of freedom embedded in them. And besides, for many of us, books and libraries can play a strong role in our sense of home, of belonging, expressed in the motto of the canton de Vaud. Here I would like to recall a famous quote that is often attributed to Thomas A. Kempis, the author of The Imitation of Christ. You might know it. It says, "I have sought everywhere for peace, but I have found it not, save in a little nook and in a little book." That describes pretty well my own experience of the BCUL, as I was a student here some 25 years ago, struggling to revise and quite often ending up reading books and articles that had little to do with my exams, quietly sitting in a little nook. But libraries do not only provide little nooks, they also give space to engage with other readers. And here, let me indulge with one last quote. I know it's a sin, but I just couldn't resist. So this one is from French writer Paul Valéry. "L'œuvre de l'esprit n'existe qu'en acte. The work of the spirits exists only in acts." So this very simple phrase, and yet very complex idea, among many meanings, this phrase can imply that books must be enacted, they must be read, they must be discussed, they need social interaction in order to exist and to stay alive. Books need a kind of agora, and libraries function as agora too. As you know way better than me, contemporary libraries are a very complex organization. They have many missions and many activities. They must evolve and innovate constantly. It suffices to read the program of this conference to grasp that the technicalities and the management of libraries are highly complex matter. But on a more superficial level, for users like I was once, we become and remained attached to libraries because they provide us with books and nooks, because they provide us with personal space and collective space with an agora. Doing so, they can build a sense of freedom as well as a sense of belonging and of citizenship. That's why I would dare say that libraries play an essential role in the constant renewal of our old motto, liberté et patrie. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that the canton de Vaud has decided to invest in the development of the BCUL and to build the beautiful extension that has been opened to the public recently. I guess that you will be able to visit it during your stay. It is one of our greatest investments of late, and this investment underlines the commitment of the canton de Vaud to arts, culture, science, and education. And thus, it also denotes a commitment to the peace that Thomas A. Kempis was looking for and to the actions that Paul Valéry wanted to emulate. For all those reasons, we are extremely happy and proud to welcome you here for this assembly as you will reflect and plan on the development and on the future of libraries. I thank you very much for the attention. I wish you a very productive and pleasant stay here in Lausanne, and I give the mic to Jeannette Frey, the director of the BCUL. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michel Wust. I know that my chief is a keen thinker. So, dear colleagues and friends of LIBER, welcome to Lausanne. No, it's such a pleasure to have you. So many friends and people I know. I love you all. It's it's great to have you here. But it's also my aim to have a more serious tone here. I never expected when we applied to host a conference a few years ago that we would be welcoming you in such troubled times. As a result, our team engage, collaborate, innovate libraries addressing global challenges is really important right now, given that the challenges facing our institutions are big. Both because of the impact of artificial intelligence. We will hear a lot about that during the conference, particularly generative artificial intelligence, and because of the budget restrictions, but also because of the geopolitical instability. This year, we will welcome you in Lausanne at the place where LIBER was conceived, as said Julien and Michel Wust. And Jean-Pierre Clavel had this idea when Europe was rebuilding after the Second World War and in the midst of the Cold War. Today, we too are facing major challenges with the rise of right-wing extremisms, an unprecedented spread of fake news, particularly via social media, increasing attacks against press freedom, and also attacks against science, which is, for me, worst. As research libraries, we are often the last bastion of peer-reviewed knowledge, as we now face critical challenges. Just to name a few, electronic collections that could vanish without notice from our catalogs, scientific databases being purged of politically unwanted content. A few weeks ago, we had to save biodiversity heritage online and to bring mirrorings to Europe. So I know about these things. And growing dependence also on monopolistic technologies. So once more, in response, we have to engage, collaborate, and innovate within Europe, and while contending with shrinking financial resources. As Michel Wust said before, we have a long tradition here of free thinking. So we hope that we will be able to continue the journey towards knowledge society here in Europe that can include all citizens and be an essential pillar for democracy. I'm expecting discussions to be hot, so is the weather here in Lausanne at the moment. So don't forget, if you get too hot, the Lac Léman is just 200 meters away. So you can cool off. Hope you have your bathing suits and bikinis. So this is one thing. And you will find this one in your tote bag. And all the water here is mineral. So don't hesitate just to fill it up. And whenever places where you get the water, it's very nice water, free mineral water for everyone here. So welcome to the Helvet Underground. Welcome to Lausanne. And I'm looking forward for the discussion with all of you. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you very much, Janet, for your kind words. Thank you very much, Michel Wust, for your introductory speech and your kind words. We are very happy to be here in Lausanne again, and we will have hopefully a wonderful week. Please do not dive into the lake between the sessions. We also have to work here. Okay, so now it's time for me, and it's my pleasure to open the meeting of participants for the newcomers and people who don't know that. It will be very short, 15 minutes before we hand it over to our keynote speaker this morning, but we have formal matters to present, and I'm very happy to invite our Secretary General, Anja Smit, to present these formal matters this morning. Anja, handing over to you.
Thank you very much, Julien. Meeting of participants. You may wonder, who are these participants? It's you. You might be more familiar with the term members of libraries, that is a more easy term to use. You, as representatives of your organizations that are a member of LIBER, are formally participants in a foundation. Julien referred to the establishment of the foundation, and currently the LIBER Foundation is established in the Netherlands under Dutch law. So that is why it's the term participants. The meeting of participants is organized every year to ensure that all the representatives of the members will take decisions that are important. The meeting, the annual meeting of participants, is the highest body in the governance of LIBER. So this is important, and that is also why we are paying attention to it at the start of this conference. The day-to-day business of LIBER, of course, is organized by the wonderful office staff that LIBER has, and also by an executive board consisting of 13 people. Every board member serves a maximum time of 6 years, and when people rotate off, we have vacancies in the board. And this is where you come in. During the conference, and more specifically today, you will be able to vote for 3 new people on the board, because we have 3 vacancies this year. And we have 6 excellent colleagues who are available for these positions. This is Anne-Sophie Axelsson from Sweden, Dagnia Baltina from Latvia, Katrin Branneman from Germany, Monica Crump from Ireland, Alicia Fatima Gomez from Spain, and David Trefas from Switzerland. 6 excellent colleagues who are candidates for the board. The elections will be held today. So I'll explain how that will go, but it's also so true that the board is able to appoint members to the board itself. Those appointments have to be ratified by, again, you as participants in the meeting tomorrow. There is a proposal for appointment of Jonathan White from Access UK, Essex in the UK, as our treasurer for LIBER. It's a board appointment because treasurer is a very important role, and we wanted to make sure that we have someone in the board who will take on that role. The board also has decided to put me up for reappointment for another 2 years. It's a bit awkward to talk about myself here. But these are an appointment and a reappointment that we'll ask you to ratify in the meeting. The voting will be done as follows. After this session, ballots will be ready for the official representatives of the member organizations of LIBER at the LIBER desk. So you will get a list of the 6 candidates, and we will ask you to select 3 people. 3 people. Not 1, but 3. Please remember that. And please return those ballots today or tomorrow morning before 9 if you are an early bird. Because at 9 we will start counting the votes, and we will announce the results of the election tomorrow afternoon in the meeting of participants. If you want to be close on the news, please come to that meeting, 1:45. You may also have a ballot for somebody else who's not able to attend the meeting to vote as a proxy. You will already have organized that, if that is the case. The voting will only take place in person during this conference today, so not online, not remote. Everybody who is here as an official representative can vote. The voting cards that you will receive, you will use to vote on other items on the agenda tomorrow afternoon. And this is what the documents will look like that you will receive at the desk. Again, the white one is the list with the candidates for the board, and the other are the voting cards where you can vote down something or vote yes for something, and it also contains a list of the other topics to vote on. This last slide I will pass because I have found already 3 wonderful colleagues who will do the counting of the votes tomorrow, starting at 9. So please turn in your ballots. If there's any questions, please don't hesitate to go to the LIBER desk to ask or stop me somewhere in the corridor. And with this, I would like to give the microphone to Dr. Janis Tsakonas. Janis.
Dear colleagues, good morning. My name is Janis Tsakonas. I am chair of the conference program committee, and I would like to update you for the conference. So typically the opening of the LIBER conference is marked by a degree of apprehension, but this year we're filled with a lot of excitement because we are having so much things to show to you. And as the summary indicates, we experienced this year an increase of submissions across all categories that resulted in a highly competitive process. We received more than 120 regular submissions, 35 posters, 16 panel, and 26 workshop proposals. And this high volume of submissions necessitated to decline or to repurpose excellent works. So if your work was not accepted in the program, believe us, it's very, very valuable. And that's why some of you already have received mails from our office to think about publishing in the journal of LIBER, the LIBER Quarterly. We are delighted to, so this is what we have accepted this year, the numbers, but we are also delighted to welcome 3 distinguished keynote speakers. First of all, Frédéric Kaplan, who will address us shortly, Thanos Giannakopoulos and Kimberly Dole. We want our keynote speakers to talk about the main theme of the conference, always, but we also recognize the importance of the interaction of, between leading researchers in their fields with our research libraries. This interest in the Lausanne conference came from the many corners of the earth. We have participants from many, many countries. This is something that pleases us a lot, because we are committing not only to promoting diversity and inclusivity, but also actively demonstrating those values. We want this conference to serve as a platform of discussing the multitude of interests, viewpoints, and angles on matters that are key for our research libraries, their institutions, and their communities. I would like to extend my gratitude to the Lausanne team because they provided a lot of support to implement a new structure. If you are attending the conference, you will experience, you will see in the program that differs a lot from the previous versions. And here you can see that in the morning, mainly we have presentations, panel, updates, and keynotes. You know, those marks are whether are parallel or, you know, in the plenary. But in the afternoon, we having a lot of network opportunities. It is very difficult for us to accommodate all interests and also to find the means to satisfy your eagerness to attend everything. But we really hope that this new format will give you a lot of opportunities for learning and a lot of options to network with other professionals and friends. Please be sure to visit the poster presentations. As you saw, we have a lot of them already accepted. And in a very blunt and often grim reality, the colorful designs that our colleagues have on their posters is a pleasure to the eye. Check your conference bag, please, and you will find a voting slip like this. See the posters, vote for the best one. We will have an award for the best poster later in this conference. But we have other things, like standing yoga. Next morning, yes, you can attend this. All of those activities are displayed on the screens in the registration area. So be sure to follow these announcements. All these will not be possible without the members of our conference program committee. I offer my sincere appreciation for their invaluable work, and I consider myself privileged working with them. I would like a round of applause for all of our CPC members. And do not forget to join the discussion if you are on Blue Sky. Now we have moved to Blue Sky like other organizations and people have done because we want fresh air to engage in meaningful and respectful exchange of experiences. So if you want to share your experiences from the LIBER conference, this is the hashtag, and you can upload everything on Blue Sky. We have also the usual illustration of the conference sessions. Now, it is my pleasure to invite my colleague in the Executive Board, Cécile Sviatek-Casafiers, Library Director of University Paris-Nanterre, to open the next session for the keynote speaker. Thank you.
Hi, Frédéric. Hi, you all. Guten Tag. Bonjour. Ciao. How you say here in Switzerland, any order of preference you have. We consider librarians and libraries are guardians for quality science, reliable knowledge, but very clearly here today, we are facing a sort of distress because we can see that there is a decline in intelligence. Frédéric Kaplan is at EPFL, the director of the Digital Humanities Laboratory and a pioneer in the field of digital humanities. And today, we are very happy to have him to reconsider and question our roles with digital mediation, large language models, and artificial intelligence. So dear Frédéric, we have one question for you today, if you want to join us for this 44th LIBER conference that your friends and family can follow online on the BCUL platform. Are we heading inexorably towards artificial stupidity? Can you take us to a long journey with words and ideas and visualization to see how we can, together with libraries and librarians, provide the humankind with the material needed to face this decline and fight for intelligence more and more and again. Please, colleagues, welcome Frédéric Kaplan.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the kind invitation. It's really a pleasure to see the full house here. I mean, it's a bit intimidating also. I'm going to talk about the information potential of books and try to see with you and discuss with you what potentially could be the role in the coming years of library in a very rapidly changing landscape. So probably all in the room, you know, I mean, that large language model can write, and many people actually use them for writing. You'll probably also know that they can draw pictures. So all the pictures of my slide have actually been drawn by ChatGPT, so I take no responsibility whatsoever. So if you like them, good. If you don't like them, okay. But essentially, maybe to start with, and this is a bit the spirit of these generative AI ideas, I've come with a couple of experiments that you can do at home. You will get different results, but my idea is actually that you can maybe have the same conclusion that I have. So one thing that I started to do, preparing this presentation, is say, okay, let's see what happens if I'm asking a large language model to write a series of paragraphs for a blog post on social media in order for people to convince to join LIBER. And so for this, I say there's content, there's beautiful content on the LIBER website. So it's just a matter, of taking the content of that page, which you have the URL here, you can probably all know, and produce new content based on this. And so it does that very nicely, immediately, and say something like, okay, shape the future of research libraries. Libraries isn't just a professional association. LIBER is not just a professional association, it's a platform for transformation. As a member, your library can directly contribute to working groups on open science, digital scholarship, AI, copyright reform, and more. You don't just follow trends, you help set them. Wow. Okay. Wow. Beautiful. Okay. So there's a kind of sort of rhythm, you see, on it, it's convincing. So let's a bit analyze what's happening here. Okay, so you have these two sentences at the beginning. So LIBER isn't just a professional association. Yeah, we may have thought it was, but it's not. It's a platform for transformation. Well, okay. And then last sentence, you don't just follow trends, you help set them. Okay, so there's something in common with these two sentences is that there's a kind of expectation and you say, it's not this, it's something else. Or it's not just this, it's something else. Okay, well, good. There's another thing which is interesting in these three sentences is that you have these enumerations. So you say, okay, it's interesting because you have working groups on open science, digital scholarship, AI, copyright reforms, and more. Okay, nothing strange. And this is a way of convincing people. You start enumerating things. Okay. Let's redo the experiments again. Okay. You get a different text. Advanced skills and leadership within your institution. Memberships unlock access to exclusive professional development opportunities, including discounted rates for the renewed LIBER Annual Conference, tailored workshops, and leadership training. It's not just about attending events, it's about transforming your team into leaders in the digital research age. Still very convincing, but now you probably understand there's a bit of a trick. So we find back again this, it's not just about attending event, it's different content, the same form. It's about transforming your team into the digital research age. And again, we have this enumeration on a different subject, but still, LIBER Annual Conference, tailored workshop, and leadership training. 3 terms. Again, okay, collaborate and lead innovation. LIBER isn't just about attending events, so you understand it's not just about attending the event, and that's something important to keep. It's about participating in cutting-edge working groups focused on digital skills, research infrastructure, citizen science, and digital literacy. So here you have a combination of the two. You have this, it's not, it's a, okay? And you have the enumeration. So let's call these two figures in names. I mean, they have been having in rhetoric different names, but the way I call them is pivot diptych. Okay, it's a bit of a bizarre term, but just to say, it's not a, it's a, okay, it's a pivot diptych. You say something which is expected and you say it's something more. And then you have rhythmic enumeration, triptych, for instance, as you have in this example. It's a bit strange that so we can do that at home and you will see by yourself. In fact, when you get your eyes a bit trained, you see that these figures which are familiar, I mean, the thing which are a bit bizarre is that they are everywhere. They're everywhere on social networks, they're everywhere in texts which are generated, and they are very clear signs that someone has used generative AI in the process and did not correct it so much while producing these things. And some people say, well, it's not true. We've been using these figures all the time. In fact, it's true. I mean, if you actually looked in the rhetorics of Cicero, or if you look in Latin rhetorics in general, you already have these type of ideas. I mean, you need to say it's something, it's not something else. And this is known as a quite efficient way of convincing ideas. Also, enumeration are known in many famous Cicero discourses, I mean, there are this enumeration. But here it's a bit, the density, which is a bit strange. What we have here is a situation where the large language model has been trapped in an attractor. I mean, it tends to go back again and again in a given forms. And you may notice it or not notice it, but it's potentially a bit worrying because, I mean, it seems there's a lot of difficulty for the system to avoid doing this. In fact, so I wrote a small piece on this in a French journal called Le Monde Diplomatique to tell about that phenomenon in French, but actually you can do it in Spanish, you can do it in Italian, it does the same thing. It would be super interesting if you find an actual language, maybe European language, where this is not appearing, that will be interesting for the study. It's a bit bizarre. I mean, how come this has emerged? Right, that was not programmed in the machine to have this type of forms. So this is partly unresolved questions. I mean, again, these are not new rhetorics elements. Probably, I mean, if we want to say, I mean, an approach is essentially the idea that, okay, as in general, this large language model needs to predict, I mean, the next token, as we call them. I mean, token can think about a word, of a group of words, of a part of a word. They tend to have to deal with a form of compression. So they will try to see what are the patterns in the type of data set they have, and they will make the most at certain level to try to be efficient in that prediction. Or any learning is compression. I mean, it's not specific about AI. You try to find what are the generalities, and for some reason, I mean, they found that way for that type of discourses is an efficient way for producing this type of text. So this is somehow intrinsic in the relationship these systems have with the data they are consuming, the data they are trained off. Still, it's a bit complex to understand why, I mean, the given data they've been seeing lead to this. I mean, one hypothesis actually is to say that this has to do maybe with publicity, because, I mean, you find these forms in publicity. I mean, these are examples of I mean, this is not a car, it's a four-wheeled driven Toyota Land Cruiser. It's not a bed, it's proven quality steep. So, I mean, if you look around, you will see that as efficient ways of selling you something. And maybe they've been exposed to publicity, but it's a bit bizarre as an explanation, but that could explain maybe one aspect. The fact which is worrying here, and so we have an avenue of research to try to understand really the origin of this transformation, is more generally that the system which are producing these clearly altered form of text, or at least text with some form of stylistic simplification, which are not naturally human, I mean, are kind of polluting their own water. Because as you know, this system, they're trained on the web in particular. They train on content they've been reading. And so what has happened in a very short time, I mean 2 years, is that there's so much content now, which is not anymore what we can call primary resources written by people which are thinking about what to write, and then words come to their mind, and then they write. That thing we used to do 5 years ago. It's actually elements which have been produced with, at some point, the mediation of an artificial intelligence, and then have some form of patterns which are completely diverse. And so if you start to think this is your model, I mean, you will get in a kind of feedback loop where you're going to train yourself on type of data, which itself has some biases, which you're likely to reinforce. And so there's a risk which is kind of identified now of what is called model collapse. I mean, it's expected, and we can simulate that if indeed a system will just train on itself, it will tend to amplify its own biases. So not just the biases of the training data, which is something we've been talking a lot in the recent years, but its own biases, its own simplification, and ends up actually, well, I'm not exactly sure what this will result, but something bizarre, certainly, and probably not very different from traditional human languages. And so this is a practical issue, also for people building the model, because this is not a desired feature, unless you really want to destroy, human intelligence very rapidly. It's an issue because the web itself, as we do not have a really reliable way of detecting these structures. I mean, we can develop systems which try to see them, but that will have, of course, a bit of issues because they will actually pinpoint Vidi Vinci, Jules Caesar as being, generated by AI. Because we're using, this type of form. Historically, don't ask what you can do for your country, what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And all these famous discourses, they potentially can be misled by private diptych. And so it's a bit problem to say these are generated by AI. And so in that situation, the web, in a couple of years, went from a situation where it was actually the main resources for training, into a situation where you just can't do anything about it. And it's done. Unless, we're capable of sorting this thing out. Okay. So in that pretty dystopic future, there's something which is interesting. It's books. Books in some books certainly now have been published with a bit of this, rhythm inside them. But let's say book published before 2020, which is still a lot. This is still a lot of books. They have a particular feature. They may be interesting, not interesting, but they are probably not having this type of biases. They are built on type of traditional writing works. And they constitute what we can, again, call primary resources. Resources you can trust in terms of representing in a way or another some form of poorly or not mediated human language. Okay. And that people, of course, know it, and books are extremely wanted by most of the people building the current models. For that, we may have to go back a bit and understand, how traditional large language models were trained. And so one of the main sources for training this model a couple of years ago was what is called C4. You maybe know the common crowd. So the common crowd is a kind of copy of the web. The problem with that copy is that you have a lot of things which are not necessarily politically correct or nice to put in a model, and so they've been cleaning up automatically, and so that has been resulted into what is called C4, the colossal clean crawl corpus, which is a clean copy of the web. Okay. And there have been some people which have been trying to look at what is in that model. That was a couple of years ago, a publication analyzing, and that was kind of interesting because what you were actually looking at, I don't know whether you can read or not, but is that, of course, there were main sites, that were actually used as source, and we discovered that it was essentially a source coming from either scientific journal or group of scientific journal or newspapers in general that were actually the main content of this archive. This has led, in fact, with a lot of questions relating to copyright and so on and so forth. But the point, maybe we can say in a very strange way, is to say that essentially regarding, newspapers and press, large language models are not bad. They know some things which were written in these different large American newspapers. Okay. Even if they write news a paper. Okay, but they're not sure how to represent it, but they actually know things about it. In fact, that has been, as I told you, the subject of some complex trials regarding whether they could or could not do that type of element. Okay, so newspapers. Now, if you looked at one of the original paper on large language model, which is extremely famous, language models are few-shot learners, which in fact sparkle a bit these GPT models, you have a very enigmatic table which is telling you the training mix of the model. So it says that it's based on the common crowd filter, so this is probably what I just mentioned, the C4 database. Then you have a series of other sources, but you have two enigmatic elements, books 1 and books 2. Okay, so these are books, probably. And you see here the quantity, as you may know, is monitored in terms of tokens. So it's a bit like words, but essentially this is what's important. You predict the next token, and so you need token to be filled on the machine. And so there have been a lot of speculation on what are books 1 and books 2. Here you see, 12 billion tokens for book 1, 55 billion tokens for book 2. And it's, to my knowledge, never been completely cleared out. Some people thought, of course, it could probably include the Project Gutenberg. Project Gutenberg started in the 70s by Michael Hart. And this represents only 5 billion tokens. It's good, but that's not enough. There's some speculation whether it's actually included quite a lot of illegal content. In particular, you have this huge library Genesis LibGen database, which is giving access to a lot of content without necessarily the right copyright constraint on it. But that is opportunity. Of course, nobody is actually saying this is the case because, of course, this is illegal. We know about Google Books. Here took 25 million digitized books. That's probably a bit more, but essentially that would be a good sources. But obviously, Google Books, apart from also the legal constraint associated with it, is essentially used by Google. But it's very unlikely that it has given it to OpenAI or Anthropic or others. In fact, I mean, if you've been following the news regarding this, there's been an interesting information which was given just a week ago about Anthropic, the competitor of OpenAI, which say that they hired the executive, the former head of partnership of Google Books, actually to do a very fast mission, a bit Google Book-like, but slightly more harsher. I mean, can you redo Google Books in 1 year instead of 10? With the same objective, getting all the books in the world. So these words are not mine. I mean, they are coming from an actual result of a court decision, which was done, which was just made public last week, in which they explain indeed what has happened for Anthropic. I mean, on the one hand, the use of potentially illegal content, and on the other hand, a particular way of dealing with digitization of books. What they did is that they bought a bulk of second-hand books, but really bulks of it. And they did what some libraries do, but most do not, which is that they removed the cover, cut the pages, and went into very fast digitization. This is, I mean, something which some people have been doing, but clearly Google Books has not done it, the Internet Archive has not done it, or whoever, and I guess most of you are not doing that in your libraries. I mean, just salvagely destroying books massively. But that was, I mean, the approach which was taken by Anthropic last year, essentially, which, in order to keep up with the pace, I mean, getting this book content as fast as possible in the model because they are precious. Just one image that I put on purpose for you, which are maybe sensible to that. I mean, imagine, I mean, these millions of books of pages. I mean, there's somewhere, I mean, all these books cut in a way or another. I don't know whether they've been thrown to the build, already not thrown to the build, put in a room, but they're there, which, I mean, this fast track versions of books without bindings, which has served to train a model which is hopefully better than the other model because it has read them. Okay. So there's something about books. So it's been a bit downplayed by the first player, but clearly this is one of the missing pieces of the current performances of model. Would that actually, or this training actually do something for the type of stylistic issue we were mentioning? Maybe. Would they give some other forms of content? Certainly. In fact, one of the experiments we did in my lab recently with my colleague Tristan and Luca was to actually make an experiment where we were trying to see whether we could measure really whether the content of a book was or not known by most of the currently available language models. And so for this, we came up with a method which is, it's not a perfect method, and definitely there are much more in books than the way we are dealing with it, but at least, it shows you a kind of protocol you can do. So we take a book, we digitize it, we have the content, and then we divide it into fixed length segments. Let's say a couple of paragraphs, for instance. Okay, so we do that automatically. And then we have different agents, different robots, if you want, that do different tasks. There's one robot that takes the segment and his mission is actually to generate questions about it. I mean, it takes an element and it creates a multi-choice questionnaire. Let me take a trivial example. I mean, there's an information about Paris, and which is, say, the capital of France, for instance, and they say, okay, which is the capital of France? Paris, Berlin. Okay, so this is typically not a very difficult question, but it does that with any content it is provided in the paragraph. And then there's a second agent, which we'll call the judge, which is trying to say whether what is the right answer on that basis, and especially making sure that the other answers are not right either. So it's not for those who make exam here. It's not so easy to make an actual questionnaire in which there's only one answer which is correct. Okay. So anyway, so they do that together until they become quite confident that there is a good question that can be asked about that given part of a book. Okay. And then you do that for the entire book, and then here comes one of the GPT model, maybe Llama, one of these large language models, and we we make a certain exam to the model without information. You say, okay, this is the questions. They don't have the book. They don't see the book. Do you know how to answer to the questions? And then we can measure a first rough information about what is the information potential of the book. So saying the agent maybe is capable of, because of his general prediction capabilities, to answer to 75% of the content. Maybe there's 25% of the content that he cannot answer. Okay. So that gives us a first indication of whether the book is already known in a way, or the content by the model. And then we do two other things. We have two strategies. One is a strategy where you include, these books in a secondary training system. So it's called fine-tuning for those who know about it. You say, okay, you didn't know about it, but now we give you this content, train over it. So you can see that a bit as memorizing, or at least getting or integrating the content of the book in some way which is reusable. And then you have another situation is, can you answer the question if you had the book on your hand? You have your content, it's like open book exam. Is it actually possible to answer this question if you see the book? Normally it should, because it should be easy, because the question were made to be understandable based on that part. And so we have these two situations, and we can then make a lot of calculus and see for each book in which cases it's somehow worth learning it by heart, and other cases where it's actually interesting knowing that the information exists and looking for it in a book. I give you an example. If you have a phone book, for instance, or a detailed phone book, it's going to be difficult for the model to learn it by heart, and it's almost impossible. And so it's better, as we do, to actually know that maybe if there's an information about a particular person, to know what is the phone number of that person. That's a bad example because it's probably infringing personal information, but whatever, you go to that information and you open the book on the right page and you answer to it, which is a bit what some of the systems are doing now when they search on the web. But so in other cases, maybe for a model where there's actually important knowledge that needs to be integrated with other knowledge, it's a better strategy to actually make it in a training set. And so this gives a kind of color to each of the book, and it associates a form of information gain, which we can then use to have a strategy, especially if you correlate that with some metadata. If you actually calculate, these on some books, and then you say, what are the characteristics of the book which adds a certain type of information gain? Obviously in libraries you have a lot of metadata. If we just pair the two, then you get in a way something which is kind of natural. You get the same type of intuition we have when we pick up a book, or when you go in a library, you actually end up potentially thinking that it's worth actually reading this book, or it's worth not reading it, just trying to use it as a reference. Right? And that thing we do intuitively, to some extent, is probably needed for this machine in a way or another, and it can be approximated and develop a form of optimal strategy for learning if you have access to the book and you're capable of understanding the first idea of the nature of their content. Okay, so that was just a small study we are starting with. But that is opening something important, which is extremely strategic, which is that the information potential of books can transfer the nature of large language model. First, clearly, people want the content of books to make the model better. There's one way, which is to destroy the book, feed it in the machine, and hope it will just get better very fast. There may be another way, which is try to understand. There's a differentiate information gain depending on the books, and then you have different strategy on how to use it in answering questions, in developing things. And so clearly in that plan, I mean, libraries play a huge role, especially associations of libraries. The question is that, is it too late? I mean, now that we understand that this is important, can we still do something? And indeed, I mean, the work is a bit gloomy, I mean, as Janet was a bit mentioning in her introduction. I mean, first, especially regarding this, the position about those who care and organize the structure of knowledge based on the access on books. So first you have the current fight between the search engine, Google-like, and the chatbots. We see progressively for the first time in the last 20 years, revenue shifting, but usage shifting from Google to ChatGPT very concretely. People ask questions to ChatGPT, they get the answer. Sometimes they can provide a reference, sometimes not, but this is very different from searching the web. Searching the web, I mean, we used to argue that was transforming completely and it was very different than going into a library, but that was still very similar. I mean, you would actually access to document and you would judge the quality of the document, and it was about searching. I mean, the change here is very different because the documents themselves, they come in the background. Maybe they can be thought as a reference, but there's nothing. I mean, the experience of being confronted with documents and navigating through them is just disappearing. And with them, be ready that even the experience of looking into physical library is likely to be more and more bizarre for people who are progressively shifting from search engine to chatbot. So this is one of the issues, which is an attack directly on the notion of documents. I mean, this is, something, we're talking about something which is, of course, 1,000 years old, if not more, and which is questioning even the document as a stable recording as a cornerstone of future knowledge system. This is what it is about. Okay. You have also, again, different studies are popping up. You get it maybe from your own experience. I mean, there's obviously an effect of the mediation of writing skills on the fact that you generate your capability of attacking the problem of writing on your own. I mean, for some people, quite rapidly, the same way that mental calculus has been lost. I mean, the capabilities of just sitting there, thinking about it, and writing something will actually become more and more difficult compared to actually generating various earlier versions and very in a fast way generating content with chatbots. So this is again something worrying. You have more generally, the situation where there's a form of optimization of processes in business, in education, but also in the everyday life where people try to be optimal in a way in their balance, when they balance their whatever work-life balance. This is an optimal work-life balance where they do entertainment should be optimal entertainment. All that, is diminishing, the pursuit of autonomous knowledge and understanding, which is kind of linked with the experience with books, okay? And of course, I think Janet mentioned it, the world enters a period of increasing geopolitical complexity, so probably it's not a very good idea if we highly depend on models which are penetrating all aspects of society from every business to your personal life, and that these models, are in the hand of a very limited number of persons. Okay, so this seems also logic. So all that, you know about that, very gloomy, okay. Okay, so can libraries still save the world? So I asked ChatGPT, essentially, which is a good thing. You should do that. And I said, okay, let's do it, it's for the hand of a keynote. So let's do it in a way which is slightly lighter, and that will give hope, and that maybe will give us idea. And so I asked about producing a comic book. I just gave the title. I thought The Library-Powered Future 2035. And I said, draw the cover page, okay? So for some reason it does like old sci-fi, we can talk about the style, so again, I'm not responsible. Especially this personification of the bot, okay, whatever. Anyway, but maybe we want to read that book still, okay? I know, at least, at least discuss about it. Okay, so So I produced it. Again, I'm not responsible for the content, but there are things which can be interesting. So by 2035, a quiet revolution reshaped AI landscape. There's always, in ChatGPT, there's always the quiet thing. I mean, you probably notice it after that. Okay. It began not in Silicon Valley, but in a global alliance of libraries. So this is a private diptych, okay? But okay, we forgot about it. I mean, we get the idea. Refusing to leave knowledge to opaque systems, okay? They launched the Public Intelligence Network, PIN, okay. Okay, well. Each library contributed digitized collection to train local models situated, annotated, and guided by librarians, not tech companies. These ran on decentralized, global, and transparent networks of green servers, okay. Wow. Students no longer relied on anonymous large language model, but engaged with library agent, and then there's okay, we don't know what it is, in local languages, able to cite books and connect to libraries, and then arrives your agent, which is saying, of course, here's the reference you need. And now, okay, it goes nicely. Okay, by 2035, the Public Intelligence Network revealed commercial LLMs in performance and surpassed them in trust, citation, and cultural depth. UNESCO endorsed it. I don't know whether you want to be endorsed by UNESCO, but okay. And it seems a good feature, I mean, in the language model. And several governments adopt it as their official AI infrastructure. Wow. Okay, and then there's yeah, okay. Of course, I mean, there's still some tension because that's important in a discourse like this. The AI race didn't end it. It split by the diptych, okay? One path followed, then, okay, it got a bit scrambled, but essentially there's the guy on the left, okay, with the dollar, I mean, and the other one, slower and richer, was rooted in books, archive, and human works of curatation, okay? Okay. Libraries led that path. And so that was the closing images from that books. And so I thought, okay, good. And so I asked actually to produce a photorealistic version of it on the table. So we can almost print it. Maybe we have to correct a couple of things. But I thought that could be maybe a starting point for opening the discussion, whether actually this could be a way, or maybe we can do something else. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Frédéric. We have some time for questions. When you are preparing your questions, maybe I can start with one easy question for you, not for us. We talked about books a lot, but you engaged and innovated also with other material like press, media, archive. Maybe you can talk about it a little so we have time to think of the public questions.
Yeah,
thank you.
So as you prepare questions, so yeah, I didn't want to bother you with the other previous project we did, but indeed, Anne's optimism helped with ChatGPT here is a bit based on some of the success and struggle also we did on other domains. So I think we are getting nicely in the world of archives. I mean, we have a project called Time Machine, which has been developing over more than 10 years now, and which is bringing that now about 700 members and a lot of what we call local time machine, which are building up or transforming history based on the content of archives. And we have another project called Impresso, which is doing that for newspaper. Again, about 10 years development here. It's conducted in my team by Moderman, and we see progressively, things getting better and access to newspaper being different. But also, I think what I learned throughout these years is that in the end, although everything could converge at some point in a utopian, very positive view about the access to information, it's also worth dealing with the specificity of each of these. So libraries are not archived, and newspapers are not the content of books, I think, as we see it now. And so this is why I think I thought, I'll address it this way. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Maria Rebinder. I'm a copyright lawyer from Aalto University, Finland. You had an interesting court case in United States. I guess they are opposing fair use, but I think in Europe we have the text and data mining exception, mandatory exception for libraries. So for Europe, I think your plan would work from the legal side, but I'm very interested. I didn't catch the details of your of the United States case, so hopefully we get the slides and get the case number from that. So thank you. So for the global library system, there are so many different legal jurisdictions, so also copyright lawyers are needed in this effort. But thank you. This is very fine vision, which I think is very interesting.
So obviously, I mean, the feasibility or not feasibility of these different things is, as boundary condition, the different copyright regime and the exception that can be done for libraries. And we see the jurisprudence progressively getting structured in the US, in Europe, based on what is fair use on the one hand, in the case of, for instance, slaughtering books and buying them is fair use in the US, for instance. And what are the exceptions for data mining, which are currently conducted in Europe. But I think most, and in that debate, the point of view of the copyright owner, the authors, the artist is valued, is sensed. But the point I wanted to bring today is that what is, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought was not so thinnable in the debate is the strategic geopolitical importance of this choice. It's not just about protecting the creative industries against whatever who is using the content for something else. It's which is one debate. It's about actually understanding that there are some resources which are managed by most of them public institutions, or at least research-oriented institutions, typically like the one which are in LIBER, which are actually playing a very important role in this AI race. And so it's not about pleasing some stakeholders. It's about deciding it's about deciding the path to actually follow. And so this needs to be explained to the people making the rules. Yeah.
Hello, thank you for a very good presentation. I love the idea of this public intelligence network vision. My name is Miriam Nauri from Karolinska Institutet in Stockholm. So my question is about the challenge, and that is, how can we make sure that books after 2020 are not contaminated by, you know, the chat GPTization of language? Because yes, we could build this public intelligent network on the books pre-2020, but language evolves, humanity evolves, and so how can we make sure that this intelligence network evolves without being contaminated? And then when I'm raising this question, there is something very paradoxical also about this vision, because then, you know, what are we trying to achieve really? Because, yeah, you understand where I'm going.
So first, I mean, it's important to pinpoint there is a danger, and so there should be a form of precaution, at least on the level of books, with any new books which is now published in the coming years, and we know it's millions of books, I mean, every year, especially for all who have the legal depot. I mean, they need to bring that to the libraries. They should be treated with caution in that respect for the moment. So this, I mean, these problems, it's not clear whether they are intrinsic to the approach or whether they just linked with the form of aggressiveness in the way things are done. I mean, in the sense that, I mean, for instance, again, I'm not sure this is the right answer, but let's imagine that these strong stylistic biases which are there are linked of the particular composition of the training. For instance, the absence of books. I mean, it's maybe not the case, or maybe there are other of the phenomena, but let's say the most obvious ones, or the most deteriorating in terms of diversity of speech, are linked with this. And maybe that can be compensated by first a control of this, then an actual monitoring on whether indeed at some point you reach a point where the language is sufficiently diverse, is not falling into these attractors. In the same way, people are fighting against hallucinations quite hardly because of that notion of not having fake news or not saying things which are wrong, which is, of course, a complex problem, but they do not do that for style. If they would actually make sure this is monitored, then maybe there's a future where, this is indeed an extremely positive development. And especially if we solve these different problems I was mentioning. If actually it is rooted in documentation, if we don't throw everything to the bin of the last 2,000 years, and we actually consider that that knowledge is built upon these elements, that we make sure what is produced is itself has the features we want it to be produced. That is possible. So I think it's just a question of being caution and the risk of the pollution. And there's a risk of polluting also about the book being polluted. Now, we know. They have a very clear tags in that respect. They're published after certain years, and so they could be treated in a particular way. So, yeah, it's about raising awareness, essentially, at that stage.
Hello, back here. My name is Megan. I'm from Vienna, the University of Veterinary Medicine Library. So you just sort of touched upon...
I just don't see you, so sorry.
Here.
Okay, you're there, okay.
Yeah. You touched upon just now the issue of things being incorrect from AI, ChatGPT. So I wanted to ask you about how do you account for this you talked about how it makes decisions, how it decides on the right answer, but we have this issue of sometimes the answer is not right, and it completely invents things like citations. If you ask it for the last 10 top 10 publications on a certain topic, most of them are going to be completely bogus. So how would you account for this in this utopian vision of ideal use of AI in the models that it's based on?
So you mean the hallucination problem in general? Yeah. How people do tackle the fact that the system are currently producing content which is sometimes completely hallucinated. And so this is a very hot topic of research, and many people are working on it. So on the one hand, there's two answers. Answers are intrinsically hallucinated, by definition, and this is what the system is doing. It's actually producing something which should sound correct. Okay, this is what they do. This system. Now, the fact that it sounds correct and it's actually not containing obvious elements which are factually wrong is something which is tackled by most of the systems. So different ways. Some do it, by checking with references afterwards from the outside. There's something interesting which has been developed over the years. Is the notion of internal probes, which actually have been able to measure that there's a very high correlation between the hallucination behavior of models and some internal parameters. A bit, when you ask the student, you bring the students about a math problem, and at some point the student know he doesn't know, and actually still try to make an answer because it's an exam and you don't want to get. But there's a kind of inner feeling, about this internal uncertainty. And this has strong correlation with some of the behavior of the network when it's less confident, which essentially means its answer is more far away than an attractor in that respect. He has a bit of doubt about this. That can be perceived internally in certain spaces. So there are various ways. So many people are looking into this because this is key. And so paradoxically, I'm not worried too much about that. It's of course very worrying. You see, you see the thing produced and students copy and pasting things which are false. But we have not seen so many societal effects about that. In the same way, I would say the global awareness about fake news, paradoxically. Okay, this is a debate, but has been a bit under control in the same way because people look at it very carefully in some way. Maybe not everybody. Okay, The things which are the most dangerous are the invisible things. The fact that there's no awareness, about the fact that there are some stylistic patterns. There's no awareness by the fact that actually we are driven culturally in an unconscious way in a direction which may have an effect on the mechanism of force. And so this is why I'm stressing a bit the attention in that respect, because I'm kind of trusting the thousands of researchers that are trying to solve the hallucination problem in another way, and also the economic incentive for solving it in that respect. I'm sure, in a way or another, this thing will progress rapidly. Yeah. Maybe not a satisfactory answer, but okay.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, that's easy.
So, my name is Adam Sofronijevic. I come from University Library Belgrade, Serbia, and I have a not so sophisticated question as hallucination and stuff. So we have printed books, and we want to put them inside the head of the robot. So we use OCR technology. OCR?
Yeah.
Which brings error.
Yeah.
So what's the level of the error that is acceptable? Because you know how many thousands of hours it took for Gutenberg people to transcribe the Gutenberg project.
Yeah, this is progressing fast. So for printed books, normal modern printed books, of course, there's always the risk of one hallucination and a wrongly corrected element. But I think things are getting nearly perfect. There's challenge for historical books. There's challenge for historical newspapers, which are very noisy. But I think in the last 2 years it made huge progress. In fact, we published a paper, I think 1.5 years ago, about post-OCR correction. Using large language models, because we deal a lot with ancient newspapers. And that was a very disappointing paper. The results were very bad because there was a lot of hallucinations, at that moment. But in the meantime, because again, it's something which is seen as important, progressively, data sets get clearer and systems get trained and trained to avoid the fact that the system is inventing things. And so also because generally speaking, the OCR level is really a problem in, I would say, any situation which is not mediated by AI. Even for normal users, they end up, we always hesitate to show the actual transcription because it's difficult to read for a human. The passage for this language model tendentially, I think we're going to find a compromise where it's correct most of the cases and introduce non-harmful hallucination from time to time. So again, this is watched with a lot of care, and I think this will be solved. So I'm confident about that. There might be some. We need to be cautious, but I think this is going to be fine.
So we will be taking the last question before we head all together, following the volunteers, to the conference picture. Last question, please.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the insightful presentation. So I'm from the National Library of Latvia, and my question in general is about your future insights about the knowledge systems. Actually, libraries have been the main leaders of in the world. So the whole library work has been about structuring knowledge, systematizing it, building the architecture about the finding and knowing. So while we are preferring the large language models, in a way we put into the oblivion the whole system of how libraries organize knowledge. So what are your insights then on the future actually role of library information systems and how they will be evolving, or whether not, or they will be just put into oblivion as well, and that's going to be just thrown out. So what do you think are in general the need, whether there is a need for still knowledge structuring in the dialogue of these artificial intelligence systems? And I also like the idea of the public intelligence network, but maybe then we have to rename not library information systems, but actually library intelligence systems. So maybe we should also go along with the time. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a very good question, which I think has not a binary answer. There are clearly some elements which regard the contextual information of books, the organization, their provenance, all the things that relate to the artifacts themselves, which are absolutely key and are completely absent from the content. The thing which are more complex is the huge effort which were made in graph-oriented modeling about the content of books, the thematics of books, all this effort about dealing of what does the book contain without actually having to access to the content, which is a huge effort. And this is a more general challenge we have with the semantic graph or the semantic web in general. I mean, the arrival of this model is challenging the whole idea that we need symbolic systems which are curated, well organized, but so small compared to the form of contextual understanding that the model brings. I mean, if I have the thematics, of a book, of course, then I can organize a graph on it. I can make a series of reasoning, but the form of continuous non-symbolic understanding, which is brought by this system, in practice as capabilities of, again, seeing the similarities between two books, saying when a book will be relevant for something. I mean, it's extremely challenging, this. So the question for the library is to act very pragmatically on this. I mean, and not throw everything, understand what is completely absent for the model, which is all the things related to the external of the book, and then harness, people are underestimating how much this transformation from clearly identified symbolic way of organizing the information to a form of continuous high-dimensional space is something which is, it's transforming not only information systems, but all the sciences. I mean, all the sciences were made on simplifications of complex things based on symbols. And this is, in practice and in theory, challenged by the arrival of this system. And we'll see how it goes. So in that moment of very big epistemic uncertainty, it's important to be pragmatic and understand really what clearly is out of the model and needs to be curated, and make the most of the new things which are popping up here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Frédéric. Thank you all. So I have this double invitation for you, is to follow the child to the picture and then come back to the halls for the poster session before we have lunch break. Thank you, Frédéric, again. Thank you all.